man who's been bringing us the excitement this morning, Murray Walker. Murray, Alain Prost the other day, we're talking to him and he was a bit worried about the track, they're always worried. I think his worries may have been eased a little this morning.
I think so, but I think I should quickly make the point that the most significant thing about today is that I'm not wearing my Wellington boots for the first time since I came here. Now, I have been sticking my neck out, Mike, and saying Prost for the World Championship. And I've been saying it in a situation where it's very contentious, where we all know that Nigel Mansell is the favourite and that Nelson Piquet could do it. But I still find it very significant that Prost has got the McLaren going well enough to put up the fastest time today. It's not a lap record because you don't create a lap record in practice. You can only do it in the race. But nevertheless, he's more than 4 seconds faster than Rosberg's lap record last year, faster than Mansell's pole position yesterday. He will be faster this afternoon, and I'm still sticking to my last.
Now, last year we saw Senna at qualifying go round in the 19s. Do you see the 18s coming up this year?
I do, yes. I've just been having a word with the master of them all, Jackie Stewart, and we both think that we're going to see 118s this afternoon. Because, in comparison with yesterday, the track is warmer, so the tyres will be hotter. I've just checked with Goodyear, and most of their runners are going to be turning out on one set of C compound race tyres and one set of E qualifiers. So they'll be taking their time to get the car right, and then they'll be really going for it with that set of tyres that'll last at most 3 laps.
Okie doke. Well, the driver's starting to get on top of this lady here, this track in Adelaide, and without wellies, or maybe with wellies, I wasn't too sure. Murray Walker and Jackie Stewart decided to take a spin around Adelaide this morning. Now, you think you've seen cars that go fast. Boy, you better take a look at these.
You ready, Murray?
I'm ready.
Great, let's go. Right.
Well, this is a bit of fun, Jackie, but there'll be no fun here tomorrow.
No, last year, Murray, I prophesied that this first corner would be a problem, and I have to say that again, this year will be the same problem. It's a real bottleneck after the cars have got up to a fairly high speed. So I think it's going to be fairly busy for these drivers. Just let's hope on race day they get through it without any, without any real big trouble.
Well, we were lucky that they did last year, and although 1 or 2 just clipped the curb, and it's a long run up to the next turn.
Well, let's go and have a drive round and have a look at the course.
Okay. Right, and look at this. Here we are in the very early morning, and just look at all the medical facilities lined up. They're cleaning the track off for the cars to go out earlier on. Everything is in prime condition.
I love the Australian architecture. You really do know you're in Australia. These metal roofs and that sort of colonial look that we have down here.
And it's nice to see so many of them, but this right-hander amuses me here because this building here is a boys' school. They were at the junior school, Christian Brothers College. They're going to get a super view on race day.
I bet they're not off of school that day.
Here's another one of these lovely houses you were talking about. And look at that, you see. There's some money going to change hands there for those seats and tables.
That looks like the prime spot for lunch.
Now, look, as we go down here, you'll see that they've got shingle down here to stop the cars. And that's actually, I think, where Derek Warwick went off yesterday. We saw him being lifted away in the crane, still inside the car.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. Murray, one of the nicest things for me in Adelaide is to pass the fruit market here. The architecture, the old building, it's so synonymous with Adelaide and Australia. You just couldn't be anywhere else.
Now, I hope they don't ever take that down. And right next to it is the famous, now famous, Stag Hotel.
Well, Murray, we're now just exited, I think, the most important corner on the whole racetrack, because if the driver makes a mess of that, this is the long straight we're going into now. If he loses a few hundred revs, he never catches them up.
This is Decaturville Terrace, which has been renamed Brabham Street. And down at the bottom last year, if you remember, there was the one bump that was really worrying people, and we were actually getting sparks. And typically, the Adelaide people have ironed that out, and it's almost as smooth as a billiard table. And as we come up to the hairpin here, I remember that last year you advised the organisers to move the barriers back to give them a greater runoff.
And they have, I think, even increased it more since last year.
And this is the tightest corner on the course, together with the racecourse hairpin that leads onto the straight.
Yeah.
And this of course, is where we turn sort of out of Adelaide in a way and into the racecourse.
Now this is the final corner, and then we head down the pit straight.
And what sort of speed do you think they'll be doing as they go past our commentary point on the left?
Well, I should think they'll be up to around about 150 miles an hour again.
Fantastic. And there they are, getting ready for the practice session. There's the Lotus team, the Brabham team, the Benetton team, and there's Alan Jones's lot.
Yep. Well, there it is, your tour of the track with Jackie Stewart.
And Murray Walker.
Driving the Golf Buggyati. David Hill, our executive producer, said you timed that lap with a sundial. Is that right?
Listen, that amount of power, I haven't driven that amount of power for years, for goodness sake.
But a man who has is Johnny Dumfries, your fellow Scot.
Yes, Johnny's doing very well. He's unfortunately going to be out of his Lotus, the JPS Lotus drive for next year, because there's a Japanese driver going to take over, because that team next year is going to have a Honda engine. But Johnny Dumfries took us round earlier on with the camera on board, and that, of course, is always a spectacular thing. Let's have a look at this right now. He's leaving Foster's hairpin right now, and he's accelerating past the pit. This is getting up to about 5th gear here. You can see him changing down and going through this chicane. It's not a big movement of the steering wheel, as you can see, but you've got to keep away from the curbs. Murray earlier on gave you most of the gear changes and speeds. But just let's talk about it right now. This is Wakefield that he's going through now. He's accelerating through these sharp left and right bends there. This is up to Flinders now, and this is Flinders he's going through. You've got to stay off of those curbs. If you get onto the curbs, that's the kind of situation that Nigel Mansell had. The other thing that's different here is the white lines. You've got to be very careful. There, by the way, is the Fruit Market and the Stag Pub on the left-hand side. This is the main straight. This is where a driver gets a few deep breaths in, because you've got to keep the oxygen to the brain. And it's at this time here, after Brewery, that he does allow himself that privilege. Main straight, 320 Ks, into 6th gear. Deep breathing, maybe even relax his neck muscles a little bit. Then heavy braking right down into 1st gear for here. Stay away from the curbs, accelerate out, immediately into 2nd, into 3rd, through the left-hander, into 4th. Through this is very fast indeed. Going through here into 5th gear. This is where Patrick Tamby had his accident yesterday, and Johansson. This is the now getting into the final corner, which is Foster's got opposite lock on. That's to say he's steering into the slide there. Full power he accelerates along with, about 850 to 900 horsepower that he's going to have in the race itself, and about 1,200 horsepower when he's going to be qualifying it in not very far from now. So I think you're going to see this kind of performance later again from Johnny Dumfries, a Scotsman. His colours always on there. He's got the St Andrews cross on his pit board. Makes the heart weary for Scotland.
Well, Jackie, we've got about 35 minutes to go, and away they'll roar in that vital final qualifying session. We'll bring it to you live right here on Wide World of Sports.
Hello, I'm Senna from Brazil. You stay with the Wide World of Sports for the 86 Australian Formula 1 Grand Prix.
Tuesday night.
And there's the scene this Saturday afternoon here in Adelaide. A good crowd building up for this final qualifying session. You can see the sun's out overhead, however. Bit of devil in those clouds, and I think they'll be praying down there in the pits that the rain stays away for the full hour today as they get ready for this qualifying session. Under 30 minutes to go now, and down there to talk about the mood at the pits, Kenny Sparks and Vern Schuppen.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, Vern, your observations on the untimed practice this morning?
Well, this morning, Ken, a lot of the cars were out there. Those that had a good run yesterday were basically out there trying their race setup with full tanks, race rubber, just sort of, you know, trying to do some homework for tomorrow's race. Now, a lot of teams didn't have that opportunity today because they had trouble, you know, in the dry, and then it rained, so they really had no chance to try their cars out and to set them up for the qualifying position, for qualifying run this afternoon. But teams like the Williams team and so on were out there running steel brake discs, which they normally have to run here because it's very hard on brakes on this circuit.
Right.
They can't run the carbon fibre brakes. Nicky Lauda or the McLaren team tried that last year, and basically the reason Nicky crashed was that one of the carbon fibre brake discs wore out and it broke. So the teams like Williams and PK, he was out there running this morning and running the race setup.
Well, thanks very much. And of course, this afternoon, one word is vital.
Well, vital, absolutely, in Adelaide for the qualifying positions to be up front, because it's pretty hairy going into this first corner through the S's. So the boys who are in front are those that have quite a good advantage.
Thanks very much, Vern. And now back to you in the commentary position, Mike.
Thanks, Kenny. And if you think Kenny Sparks doesn't mind a label or two on his gear, Kenny's just a poor relation compared to the drivers here and their cars, because I never cease to be amazed at just how much money is tied up in this sport. The man who knows all about it, of course, because he got plenty of it, was Jackie Stewart, the 3-times former world champ. And Jackie's been out taking a look at the world's fastest billboard. They are the drivers, the man reporting, Jackie Stewart.
The glamorous multi-million-dollar world of Grand Prix motor racing is highly financed. And it's never more clear than when you look at what's behind me now. This car, the Canon Williams Honda, this helmet, the uniform, and the mechanic are decked out with corporate identity. Without the money that these large multinational corporations put into this team and Grand Prix motor racing would not exist today. The considerable monies? Well, let's have a look at just what's involved, who they are, and perhaps how much they pay. Canon are the major sponsor. They're producers of a lot of electronic equipment as well as cameras. They probably put in around $5 million a year. The Mobil Oil Company, they have their oils used in this car as well as sponsoring the car for the benefit of exposure. Probably around $2.5 million a year. Tactile ICI, they're in the fabrics business, and of course ICI are a big multinational. They, for the exposure, about $2.5 million they pay. Denim, men cosmetics, they like it. It's only about 6 or 8 inches long, their exposure on each side of the car, but it's worth a couple of $1 million. Honda, perhaps, the most extravagant of all. They spend, it's rumoured, $50 million a year on engine development solely to supply the Williams team. That's a lot of money for Honda, not only in hard cash and engines, but also in personnel to service it. Calma, their computers are used and they spend about $1.5 million a year in the equipment to give to the Williams team. Goodyear are the suppliers of tyres. It would cost you about $250,000 a year just for the use of the tyres. Austin Rover, well, they give them the transporters that they use to take the cars around Europe and the road vehicles while in Europe. NGK, sparking plugs. You've got to have a reliable spark. Williams and Honda have chosen the spark plug company. Fun Metal, produce the wheels. You can't have a mechanical failure on the wheels. And now for charity. Save the Children. The Princess Anne, she's the patron, and she's driven a Williams Grand Prix car. So they felt it would be nice to allow the name to be exposed all around the world on their race car. And now for the driver himself. Of course, he wears uniform. But round that uniform is plastered as many decals and as many corporate messages as is possible. Of course, the main sponsors that were on the car are still on here, but there are additional sponsors. For example, there's a bank in the Isle of Man for Nigel Mansell. Then there's men's fashion that he's involved in. He's got an airline from the Isle of Man also. And he's got something else down here that's involved with investments, as every racing driver should have. And on his helmet, that's as busy as can be also. The same main maker of clothing here, the same bank. He's got a luggage manufacturer here, a crash helmet manufacturer identified here. All of them pay a considerable amount of money. From a driver, if he sells himself well, he should be looking at, from his overalls and his helmet, about $1.5 million American per year. The reason all of those companies are involved, Keep in mind, 43 countries will be taking live satellite feed of this Australian Grand Prix, and that means that this fast-moving billboard of names will be going out to all these people. So just for this Grand Prix alone here in Adelaide, the cost of putting this, paid for by all of these names, would be about $1 million for one race. And there are 16 races in the calendar year for the World Championship. That's how much money it takes to put a team together.
Well, absolute megabucks here in Adelaide. Megabucks too off the coast of Fremantle over there in Western Australia for the America's Cup. We'll be crossing live there during the afternoon. A great wide world of sports coming up. We hope you stay with us.
Hi, I'm Patrick Dombey. This is Wide World.
With the largest Australian ensign you'll ever lay your hands on. It's 88 feet by 44 feet. And just another spectacular display. You'll be able to catch them all afternoon live here on Wide World of Sports. And our co-commentator here, one of our commentators, Jackie Stewart, no driver in the history of motor racing has done more to champion the cause of safety. So it was only apt that we sent out the man himself to take a look at the track around here in Adelaide and talk about just how hard the organisers try to make this race as safe as humanly possible. Jackie Stewart reports.
The origins of walls like this on racetracks probably came from Indianapolis, where for years they've been having accidents, high-speed accidents, more than 200 miles an hour, where cars come along and crease themselves against those walls. The great thing about it, however, is that the car usually stays upright, does not flip over, because nothing on this wall would allow the car to climb up it, more or less, and that's the problem that most barriers give to cars. It launches them into the air. Not so with concrete. The other thing here that is very similar to Indianapolis is this kind of debris fence. Look how strong this is. The idea is that if a high-speed accident does occur and wheels and suspension units, sometimes even engines and gearboxes, fly off those cars, this is to protect the spectators, to try and keep the accident within the racetrack. One of the latest developments in safety is Stone Age. In fact, it's gravel. Look how this works in with my feet here. The idea is that if a race car flies off the road here, it's decelerated by this gravel. It doesn't turn upside down because it doesn't dig in. If it were grass or it were mud or even sand, the race car could dig in with these big wide wheels and flip over. Gravel allows the car to slide, but it does bog it down. The chances are if a car goes off in this gravel, it doesn't get back into the motor race. But it is a very safe way of slowing down race cars. This pile of tyres are created to be a deformable structure. If a car comes around this corner and collides with these tyres, they will deform. They will reduce the amount of damage to the car, and more important than anything else, reduce the injury to the driver. Because as they compress, the car and the driver, of course, gets that energy diffused before they come in contact with the concrete wall. This certainly has saved a lot of injury in recent years. The race cars would be coming down that straight at more than 300 kilometers an hour. Everything would be fine, but if you had a mechanical failure, a brake failure, for example, on safety, what I have behind me here is really what is required: space. It's a runoff area. If a car did lose its brakes, the driver could spin it, he could change down, and he would have room to decelerate, and there is no substitute for that. So that's what safety amounts to here in Adelaide. The concrete walls, the debris fences, the gravel, the deformable structure of the tyres, and finally space. It's been well thought of, and I think the drivers are in good hands.
Jackie Stewart reporting on one of his favourite subjects, the subject of safety. As we all know, Jackie is a nice, chirpy sort of fella, but as a layman talking to the drivers, the various drivers you meet in Formula One, they're not all like that. There's some pretty hard, tough men. But one fella who's a really lovely fella, and probably the most popular man on the circuit, is Alan Jones's teammate for Lola, Patrick Tambay. Let's meet that man himself, the popular Frenchman, Patrick Tambay.
First gear, be careful with the traction. Second gear, third gear, fourth gear. Good acceleration down the pit straight there. This is a qualifying lap, 220 kilometers an hour.
It was the likeable Frenchman who first introduced millions of Australians to Grand Prix racing from the cockpit of his Renault Racer. In fact, last year's Aussie Grand Prix was to be the French connection's final fling. All this left Patrick in somewhat of a spin.
Downshift here now in third gear for the right-hander onto the main straight. Oh, a little too quick. I blew this one up, didn't I?
This season promised much, with Tambay joining forces with our former world champion Alan Jones in Ford-powered Lola cars, backed by American millionaire Carl Haas. This incident in the fourth round at Monaco laid the foundation of the season to come.
Yeah, I was very lucky. The weekend didn't start off very well. I thought that I had a pretty good setup with the race cars, and 2 minutes from the start, I had to switch back to the T car because we had a turbo problem, and the T car was set up for Alan, and it was a bit of a crazy mad rush to get things started, and at the end of the race, I threw away an 8th place finish with a little bit of a slow roll over my friend Rundle.
Throughout 86, the competition has been fierce between the two Lola pilots, many times ending with the Frenchman taking the higher grid spots, but Jones grabbing the championship points. This led to rumours of rift between the two drivers. As the season wore on, so did the rumour persist.
Certainly do enjoy Alan for his sense of humour and off the track, and the work on the track has not been as great as it should have been, but it's been fun with him, and we haven't had, apart from a rivalry that I understand is the same between all the drivers, we haven't had any other problems in that.
What does Patrick Tambay do when he's not driving racing cars?
Well, I'm a keen follower of sailing, and with the America's Cup, Australia's Cup or whatever, down here I'm following in the press every day what's going on and what's happening.
So it's Patrick Tambay to win in Adelaide and maybe French Kiss to qualify for the America's Cup?
The odds are probably the same for both of us. That's a 7. Lucky number.
Earlier this week, Patrick played a Pro-Am golf tournament alongside one of Australia's Dunhill Nations Cup heroes, Roger Davis. It was evident from the first tee that Patrick is more at home driving a high-powered car than a golf ball. But Patrick Tambay is quickly getting into the swing of things in Adelaide, showing he can drive for dough and putt for show.
It's hard enough for the pros today, let alone the amateurs out here, especially, you know, with the greens as fast as they are and as hard as they are.
The greens on the golf course may have been fast, but not as quick or slick as the green infield at the track. Patrick's already given the wall one French kiss.
Darryl Eastlake reporting on Patrick Tambay, and maybe a smidgen of disharmony there between Patrick and his teammate Alan Jones. It seems to me, just looking at this sport, Jackie, that hardly any teammates get on. Did you get on with yours?
Well, I have to say I did. In fact, one of my best friends ever was a teammate of mine called Francois Sever, a lovely Frenchman, sadly got killed in what was to be my last Grand Prix ever. But he was young, you see, and I wanted him to succeed, and I wanted to pass on all the knowledge or wisdom that I had because I knew he would be taking over from me. And I had a special part in my heart, I suppose, for him and his future. But of course, all those drivers are very competitive with each other because it's a hard-bitten world. If you're not quick enough, you're out. And if your teammate's faster than you are, then you can get bitter and twisted about his performance. So sometimes it's not a good feeling.
Okie doke, it's all right for you lot at home. You're having a day off, but in a moment, Jackie Stewart is going to take you to a day at his office.
The best Grand Prix action. Keep watching Wide World of Sports.
And with only 10 minutes to go before this vital final qualifying session, excitement certainly mounting here in Adelaide, and we'll bring it to you live on Wide World of Sports. Well, that's the scene, and I guess although the numbers appear to have diminished in recent years, most of us in Australia continue to go to work. Some of us push a pen, some may work in a factory. But for a Formula One driver, it's a totally different scene. His scene is deadly earnest, and Jackie Stewart's been down. The Lola Ford people have given us a look at one of their cars. You just met Patrick Tambay, so let's go with Jackie as we go to a Formula One driver's day at the office.
In which we work, in the environment that we live in our work, concerns us all. It also concerns Alan Jones. This is his environment, the cockpit of this race car. Let's have a look at what gauges, what switches, and all that he has to do when he drives this race car. Not only racing drivers are pampered, the cars also. Look at this, a glove for the steering wheel. That's to give this lovely suede-covered steering wheel protection, moulded specially to the driver's needs. Now, Phil's going to take off this front cowling here so that we can see more clearly what goes on. The gauge that is most important to Alan Jones, almost in his line of vision, is, of course, the turbo boost gauge. Now, normally in a race, that would go up to about 3.8 bars of turbo boost. And to do that, this gauge here would go up and level with this permanent one to show him what he needs. In qualifying, it'd go up to 4 bar, for example. Now, normal atmospheric pressure is about 15 pounds per square inch. This is about 3 times that with full turbo boost. As we go down here, we've got the oil pressure gauge here, and it also gives fuel pressure. There's a switch that can give one or the other. Over here is oil temperature and water temperature. Depending on what direction one of those switches are put over here, these 2 gauges serve 2 particular purposes. The largest one of all, of course, is the rev counter. Just as you in your road cars have to address the speedometer to stay within the limits of the law, the limits of the law for this engine is the speed of the engine. It would go up to about 11,000 revs, for example. Then we have 2 other gauges. This one over here gives out the number of laps left on fuel alone. In other words, out of an 80-lap race with 20 laps to go, if this gauge only read 18 laps, Alan Jones would have to back off the throttle to keep his fuel consumption down to give him the full race distance. Over here, there's another readout. This is for the exhaust temperature. And this engine is a 6-cylinder engine split into 2. The left-hand exhaust temperature and the right-hand exhaust temperature. There's a switch to be able to give both of those, and that is there. The left temperature and the right temperature. If these temperatures go up too high, an engine could blow. When that happens, the turbo itself would blow, and you'd see a lot of white smoke coming from behind this car. There's 2 idiot lights, as they call them, instead of gauges. The oil pressure, if it goes right down, this light here, an orange light, would come on. The fuel pressure, if that was failing through a pump or low fuel, then that light would come also. There's a radio switch. This is so the driver can switch his radio on and then press this button to speak to his crew. Now a vital part of Grand Prix racing. You've also got a light switch up here which switches on the rear light in the case of rain so that cars coming from behind can see that strong, high and intensity light. These 2 here, these 2 things are to adjust the pressure in the turbo because there are 2 turbos in this car. If the left-hand turbo is going a little bit low, and he would see this in this gauge, he would switch a switch to adjust, by doing so, the left-hand turbo. The right-hand turbo is adjusted here so that both of them are synchronized, same way as a jet engine. There's a few other points in here that the driver has to address. The roll stiffness. If the car has got too soft a suspension roll in the front, the driver can stiffen that up by turning it to the right or soften the car off by turning to the left. The brake balance, the ratio from the front brakes to the rear brakes can be changed also because as the fuel load goes down, the weight distribution changes and he can adjust the brake balance by doing this. Then, of course, there's the gear shift itself, a 6-speed forward gear shift that he would use all the way around this course. To get into reverse gear, he would have to pull this out so that he doesn't inadvertently engage a reverse gear while going forward. It is tight in this compartment. Alan Jones, in fact, will have to work hard here on Sunday. He could lose up to 3 kilos in weight, all because of the physical effort and all that he has to do in his office.
Jackie Stewart at the office he knew and graced so well. And behind us we can hear the drivers bunding on, I guess you might say, as they arrive at their office again for the 1-hour final qualifying session. Begins in just a few minutes' time. The engines that they're gunning are rather different, though, to the ones that they'll use in the big race tomorrow. Jackie Stewart reports once more.
I don't believe in bad luck. I think it's due to poor preparation. That could never be claimed of this team in the relationship to qualifying. It's excellent preparation, masterminded by two men that have allowed Ayrton Senna to have 8 pole positions this year alone. Those two men, Peter Warr and Gerard Descartes, one a team manager, the other an engineer. And this is the equipment that allows Ayrton Senna to get those pole positions. You see these 2 gearboxes there? They look identical. Wrong. The one on the left, that's a race gearbox. That'll do all 80 laps. The one on the right is only capable of doing 4 fast laps. 2 engines behind me. Look identical. There's parts missing from this one, but they look identical. Wrong. The one on the left is the race engine. It's going to do the full 80 laps. The one on the right is a 4-lap special. It produces about 1,200 horsepower. This one over here produces around 850 to 900 horsepower in the race. Then there are tires. 2 identical tires. Wrong again. The one on the left, that's the race tire. It'll do more laps. This one here has a sticky compound. It only is good probably for a lap and a half to 2 laps of real hard driving by Ayrton Senna. But the real secret of qualifying is in this here. The 2 turbos. The one on the left is set up to do the whole distance at race boost. This little baby here is set up for those magic 4 laps. It's going to make that Renault engine produce that 1,200 horsepower, and frankly, it's going to burn out after only 4 laps. So turbo technology is really what it's all about.
And just listen to that noise from a very noisy Lotus garage. Jackie Stewart reporting again. We'll be back in a moment for this vital final qualifying session for tomorrow's Australian Formula 1 Grand Prix.
My name is Michele Alboreto. Stay watching the Adelaide Grand Prix.
It's a vital final qualifying session down there in pit lane, where they come out as they're catapulted from a giant Shanghai, Ken Sparks and Vern Schuppen.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, the adrenaline is really pumping down here on pit road, and of course we now go to the vital timing. Vern, what will the drivers be looking for?
Well, of course, looking for the fastest time they possibly can. As each car crosses the start-finish line, it breaks an electronic beam, which sends a signal back to the computer in the timing tower. And also, each individual pit, each driver has his own monitor to watch. So basically, they're just going out to go as hard as they can and be as near to the front of the grid as they can for tomorrow.
Of course, Mansell was first out. He's keen, isn't he?
Yeah, well, of course, he's the one that's got the most on the line, so he's got a lot to do.
Right, back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Ken. Well, as you watch Nigel Mansell, who is holding pole position at the moment from yesterday's session, circling the track and first out, this is the most important 60-minute final qualification session of the 1986 Grand Prix season, because 3 men, Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost and Nelson Piquet, are in contention for this year's World Championship, and a front row's position on the starting grid for tomorrow's last round of the championship here in Adelaide is vital for all. Can probably go the whole race distance on the set of tyres that he's using at the moment if he wanted to. He won't, of course. He'll be getting the car absolutely au point for this Adelaide circuit. Then he'll put on the ease, probably towards the end of the session, and go for it, as will all the others.
Yes, when they put on the ease, they've got 1 or 2 laps before the very, very soft, sticky compound overheats, but they hope to get a good time. It becomes a very tactical battle then. Timing is very important because they must get a clear run. If they're on a fast lap and they come on a slower car, they've ruined the tyres already and they don't get a second chance. So there is Mansell. He's warming up his C's. He'll be able to go pretty quickly on those. He'll want to establish a good time. He'll try and improve his yesterday's time on these C tyres, which, as Murray says, will last him as long as he wants, really. And then when he's done that, and done a few laps, he'll go in and he will wait in the pits, and he will try and time it when the track isn't too busy. You see him sliding about quite a lot. The tyres aren't yet hot. They take a while to come in. And then down the long straight, they build up. Here they build up to some 200 miles an hour. You see Manson, he was weaving about. That's to try and get a little bit more heat into the tyres, to warm them up. He'll probably take the second lap quite slowly as well, and then on his third lap he'll start really going for a time.
Nigel Mansell's fastest time yesterday, which gave him provisional pole position on the starting grid, was 1 minute and 19.255 seconds. But significantly, Alain Prost in the non-qualifying session this morning went round fastest of all time at Adelaide, 1 minute 19.121 seconds, which is some 4 seconds inside Keke Rosberg's 1985 lap record, and faster than Ayrton Senna's pole position time last year. Well, you now watch Gerhard Berger, the Austrian, in the tremendously powerful 1350 horsepower in qualifying trim BMW-powered Benetton. That is the man who won the Mexican Grand Prix. Now, let's go round the lap with him. He goes from here, the start and finish point, into the S's in second gear. Then he goes round what I call Gumtree Bend for obvious reasons, down to Wakefield Turn, second gear at about 110 k's. Now into East Terrace Bend, second gear still, 110 k's, and Berger really looks as though he's pressing on. He, unlike all the other drivers I've mentioned, is using Pirelli tyres and may well be going for a fast time right from the beginning. Flinders Bend, the right-hander. Now he comes up towards Market's Turn, which is a second gear, 110 miles an hour, 110 k's an hour turn, up to Stag Turn by the famous pub of that name. Now down towards Brewery Bend. He's doing about 150 kilometers an hour. Swings round, well, he's speeding up, but he is not on a qualification lap at the present moment. He was 2 seconds faster on his last lap than he had been yesterday, and it's actually put him up into 5th position on the grid as you look at the cool, calm and methodical Ayrton Senna sitting in his car. Now, Senna has got an enormous number of pole positions to his credit already in his short career. 15 times he's been in pole position. He's waiting to go out in his Lotus Renault on his Goodyear tyres. The Lotus pit crew getting him all ready. He's got one of the very latest Renault qualification engines behind him, which produce well over 1,200 horsepower. Now Berger's going for it. Watch him. The target time for pole position at the present moment is that of Nigel Mansell, 1 minute 19.255 seconds.
Yeah, Berger is definitely on a quick one now. He's already improved his time dramatically, making himself up into 5th place with a 120.5. Qualifying form, the BMW engine he's got behind him is probably the most powerful. See a little bit of fluid just spilling out of the breather there. Hard on the brakes at the last hairpin, and then on to full power down the pit straight. And that was just a little bit slower than his first lap this afternoon. We saw Ayrton Senna just now sitting in the pits. He would be waiting for the initial rush of traffic to die away. It's so important in this qualifying to get a clear lap, and the trick is to try and get out there when most of the other people have done their run and come in again.
Down in the pit lane, the Goodyear and the Pirelli tyre technicians, there incidentally is Alan Jones in the cap and the jacket, are testing the temperature of the tyres as they come in and the drivers stop. They stick a probe right across 3 points of the compound of the front and rear tyres, measure the temperatures. That there is Stefan Johansson, the Swedish driver for Ferrari, who is about to drive for his last time for Ferrari in 1986 on Sunday, because he has been, in the opinion of many people, wrongfully dismissed by Ferrari to make room for Gerhard Berger. There's Ingegneri Tomeni just walking out of the picture. That's the man who's responsible for setting up Johansson's car. And the Swede crashed very badly yesterday in practice. I thought he'd broken his leg when he hopped away from the car, but he turned out merely to have bruised it, although his rib cage is very, very sore, he told me this morning. Now, the mercurial 15 pole positions, Ayrton Senna in the Lotus, arguably the fastest man of all on the Grand Prix circuits, certainly in qualifying trim. So we'll be back. Nigel Mansell in pole position yesterday is still there, and he's gone around faster than he did yesterday afternoon. You're now watching one of his main challengers for the World Championship and the race, his teammate Nelson Piquet in the Williams Honda. Now, at the present moment, Piquet is down to 4th position because René Arnoux, the little Frenchman who went so well in the non-qualifying session this morning, has moved him out and gone up to 3rd position. So 1 minute 20.133 is not fast enough for Piquet to improve.
And an absolutely electrifying lap by Nigel Mansell puts him over a second clear of his rivals, and that is really a target to shoot at. Alain Prost went quicker than the 19.785 that you see captioned. He went quicker than that this morning, and that is one of the Benettons parked in the sand. It was Berger who's pulled off the road, so he'll be rushing back to get in the spare car as we watch Nelson Piquet. Nelson is on a quick lap. He's so far done a 20.1 this morning as we look at Keke Rosberg sitting in his car. And here's Piquet. He's got a problem, he's got traffic in the way. That won't help us that time. He had to take the inside line. He wasn't on the perfect line for that corner. That'll cost him 2 or 3 tenths of a second at least. And he's still pressing on with the lap. On full power past the start-finish line. And that was not a quick one. He's too held up. Now Piquet on a quick one. He looks to have a fairly clear road in front of him. But one slow car, but that was keeping well out of his way. So Piquet on a clear lap.
Going for Nigel Mansell's incredible time of 1 minute 18.403. compared with the pole position time last year of Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 19.8. So Nigel Mansell is already nearly 1.5 seconds inside last year's pole position time. When this practice session began, we had that dream of the top 3 men in the championship in the top 3 places on the grid. It's still Mansell leading, but now Senna has gone up to 2nd position on the grid with a time of 1:19.6, and as Piquet is coming up towards the completion of his lap, going for 1:18.4, the order is Mansell, Senna, Prost. 1:18.4 is what Piquet's after. And he is 1.2 seconds outside that electrifyingly fast lap of Nigel Mansell's. I remind you again that all the top men at the present moment, including Piquet that you have just seen, Senna that you've just seen, and Alain Prost there, are starting their practicing on C compound full race tyres, which are not as fast as the E compound qualifiers, which they can and will be using later on in this session. So if we have got 1:18.4, I should think we're going to see a considerable improvement on that later.
Yes, but that will do a tremendous amount for Nigel Mansell's confidence. Obviously, he's under some pressure here, and that must surely relax him up a lot to have posted such a good time so early on. Alain Prost has come out earlier than he usually does. He normally waits for a good 15 minutes into the session waiting for traffic, but he's been ousted from the second place he had yesterday. He's now down to 4th because Senna and Piquet have just ousted him, and Prost is already going for it.
And there is Nigel Mansell sitting coolly in his car, looking at the lap times monitor temporarily positioned in front of him, with the knowledge that he is 1.2 seconds faster than Ayrton Senna, who is the nearest man to him. A quite incredible performance. Alain Prost, as James said, out much earlier than usual, going for it. 1:18.4 the target. His fastest time yesterday, 1:19.8. Into the last turn. And that is an indication of how incredibly quick Nigel Mansell was going earlier on today. And that is Patrick Tombé's car stuck in the middle of the circuit there. And that's the reason why a complete 360-degree spin for Patrick Tombé. The Lola Haas Ford team is in bad shape today because Alan Jones blew a turbo this morning.
Yes, and Tombé stalled the engine, but we got him going again. He would have required a push start. There he is, back circulating. Stefan Johansson sitting in his Ferrari. You see he's watching the monitor of the times as they come up to see what he's got to do, and that also is a very important part of timing. There is Mansell sitting in his car, and he must be feeling very contented at the moment. He's set a time that is really going to be hard to catch.
René Arnoux, the Frenchman, in the French Ligier with its Renault engine behind him, went extremely well this morning and is in 5th place at the moment. As you look at Ayrton Senna in the Lotus Renault, the order, and we are now into the 20th minute of this 60-minute session, with every indication that, unlike yesterday, we will go to the full 60-minute period because the weather is looking excellent. It's Mansell number 1, Senna number 2, Piquet number 3, Prost number 4, Arnoux number 5, and Gerhard Berger, the Austrian, in 6th position. And Ayrton Senna on, I suspect, still the C compound race tyres, chasing Nigel Mansell's incredible fastest lap so far, 1:18.4. .1 seconds off is a very, very long time in Grand Prix racing qualifying terms.
Yeah, but it looks as if so far Lotus not having problems with their under tray. It seems to be attached. And that, of course, would not make the car as quick as it might be later.
Yes, Senna has taken a lot of stick from the insiders in Grand Prix racing because they have accused the Lotus team of team manager and Ayrton Senna, the driver, as you might expect. That's Keke Rosberg, world champion of 1982, the man who won here at Adelaide last year for the first ever World Championship Australian Grand Prix. Then in a Williams Honda here in a McLaren tag. And at the moment he is down in 8th position. He finished 5th yesterday, so he slipped 3 places. And all the top men have improved their times. Mansell is faster than yesterday, as are Senna, Piquet, Prost, Arnoux, Berger and Alliot. But in 8th position, Keke Rosberg, that you look at now, is at the moment slower than yesterday. His time then was 1:21.29. And that's really irrelevant, because his target is that of Nigel Mansell, the pole position holder. Keke Rosberg getting ready for his last Grand Prix drive, because he has announced his retirement and intends to go from being a driver to a promoter in 1987. As Keke Rosberg approaches the end of the lap, Nigel Mansell is going out again. It is now the 22nd minute. I suspect that Mansell is still on his C race tyres. They'll be leaving the fitting of the qualification tyres to the very last moment, commensurate with there not being a lot of traffic on the circuit that would slow them down. 1:18.4 is Rosberg's target.
I just have a sneaking suspicion that Mansell and his Williams team might have done a clever flanker and sent him out on qualifiers on the E compound tyres straight away to post that time, because the others seem to be having that much of a problem getting anywhere near it at all. And an 18.9 for Ayrton Senna. So Ayrton Senna in 2nd place. He improves his time, but he's still half a second away from Nigel Mansell. But I think maybe Mansell has already used his qualifiers. He can also make a combination of the two. He can use on the right-hand side of the car, the tyres do less work, so the qualifiers from that side could move to the left-hand side of the car, and a set of C's go on to the right of it. They have 2 sets, but they can juggle the individual tyres around.
36 minutes to go of this vital qualification session. Join us again soon.
Well, we've done 26 minutes now of the Formula One final hour of this Australian Grand Prix build-up, and there you see the fastest time so far. Nigel Mansell still on the pole. 2nd fastest now is Ayrton Senna. 3rd fastest Nelson Piquet. Then comes the reigning world champion Alain Prost. 5th fastest right now is René Arnoux, the young Frenchman. And then comes Berger, the man who won in Mexico. Back for more live coverage of this to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Such is the speed of this searingly fast qualifying session, with Ayrton Senna sitting there in the pit, that the first 4 men, Mansell, Senna, Piquet and Prost, are all inside Ayrton Senna. There he is, last year pole position. So that's an indication of how quickly the cars are going in 1986.
Senna, you've just seen his pit. And believe me, he will be waiting probably right to the last 5 minutes of qualifying, working on the thesis as we watch Nigel Mansell, who's out there probably just keeping an eye on things, defending his pole position. I don't suppose for the moment that he's trying to improve the time. But Ayrton Senna does specialise in the last 5-minute run, and that's quite sensible here, because this track is getting more and more rubber down on it all the time, and that tends to make the track quicker and grippier. Well, Mansell is certainly on a quick one. Tidy now. Mansell brimming with confidence. straight circuit, knocking it up to 200 miles an hour, then hard on the brakes, down through the gearbox, short squirt through the twisty little bits. Rosberg in front of him, he's just warming up tyres, but he for sure will have seen Mansell coming and will give him the space he needs. And that certainly wasn't a quick one. He's built up the speed, flash of sparks as the car bottoms, the stadium skid plates protecting the underneath of the car as they run it as low as possible, get as much downforce.
As I look at my computerized readout in front of me and I see that Nigel Mansell is currently in pole position and Ayrton Senna, I am reminded of Adelaide 1986 when it was 85 when it was the other way round. Senna in pole and Mansell second, and the fact that Mansell Piquet exactly halfway through this qualifying session. We are now into the 31st minute, and Alan Jones has just gone round in 1:22.8. He's in the background at the present moment. There he is, behind Nelson Piquet. But he's well down. He's only in 14th position, Alan Jones, although he has improved the time that he put up yesterday. So Nelson Piquet now you're looking at. He has 20 pole positions in his very distinguished career, going for 21. And wouldn't that be nice for him if he did, because it would put him in the psychological plus position ahead of everybody else. And that's what is going to be needed at Adelaide as you watch Alan Jones, who blew a turbo this morning from his Ford engine. Neither of the two Ferraris, incidentally, have improved on yesterday's time. Michele Alboreto is in 9th position and Stefan Johansson in 11th place. Philippe Alliot, who is 8th, has not improved. And with Alan Jones building up to go for a quick one, the order remains in the 32nd minute. Nigel Mansell, pole position. Senna, second. Piquet, third. Both the Williams Hondas in the top 3. Prost in 4th position, and he needs to improve if he's to keep his World Championship hopes alive at the start of the Australian Grand Prix. Arnoux 5th, Gerhard Berger 6th.
It's interesting to see that. Alan Jones clearly started that as a quick lap. For some reason, he was unhappy with it, and so what he has to do is to slow right down to cool the tyres down. When you commit to a quick lap, you can't do too much on these tyres. They don't last very long, and so you've got to either go for it or keep them cool. He started quickly, saw that he wasn't happy. Now he's slowing it down, and he'll build up his speed at the end of the lap. For the last corner, he'll take that as hard as he can to get a good slingshot across the start-finish line. And no, he's decided to come in. So Jones into the pits. There's Ayrton Senna, looking fixedly at the screen with the readout of the lap times, waiting to time his final attempt.
The man talking to him is Steve Hallam, who is his race engineer. Between them, these two, as in every other team, have to be jointly responsible for setting up the car. Senna, of course, has the experience from driving it, and he will translate that to Steve Hallam, who, in consultation with his driver, will ensure that the car is modified as necessary to give it the maximum speed on the circuit. This is Stefan Johansson, Ferrari. Going well in spite of the bad knock that he had in practice yesterday. He's at East Terrace Bend now. Let's follow him round towards Flinders and on towards Market's Turn. And Patrick Tambay has done it all wrong. He did it all wrong yesterday when he went off with a colossal thump. And here he is, losing traction, hitting the tyres, doing the car no good at all. He hit it sideways on, and it doesn't look look as though he's damaged anything, but they will want to check the suspension linkage very carefully when he comes into the pits.
He's really having a pretty unhappy weekend, Tom Babe. He's spent probably as much time off the track as he's spent on it so far. Here we see it again. He goes wide, gets onto the slippery stuff, doesn't make the turn in, and boom, sideways into the tyre barrier, which catches the car very well, and it looks pretty much undamaged. You'd have to go in, maybe, I think I saw a wishbone bent on the front suspension. Yeah, got a bit of a kink there, but he'll go and check it all over. That should be easy to repair, or else he can take the spare car out.
And as Tombe drives in to get his car looked at in the 35th minute in this 60-minute qualifying session, the last of the meeting, Nelson Piquet has moved up into second place, 0.3 of a second behind his teammate Nigel Mansell. There is the order. The two Williams Hondas on the front row of the grid. Mansell in pole position, the World Championship leader. Nelson Piquet second. Senna third. Prost fourth. Arnoux fifth. Gerhard Berger sixth. And we will be back.
This is Channel 9's Wide World of Sports, the continuing coverage of the Foster's Australian Grand Prix, the final hour of practice. Fastest is still Nigel Mansell, second fastest is Nelson Piquet, third is Ayrton Senna, fourth Alain Prost, fifth René Arnoux, and sixth up into that leaderboard is Alio. 37 minutes completed so far of this 1 hour, the final hour. Back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Back for the final session of this FIA World Championship preparation session here. And there is Derek Warwick, who again had trouble this morning. He was craned off the circuit yesterday. He had trouble with his tremendously fast but unwieldy and ungainly Brabham BMW this morning. The Englishman not terribly happy. He is using Pirelli tyres, unlike most of the others who are using Goodyear tyres. But the Pirellis went extremely well in the Australian Grand Prix last year. And now, with this 60-minute session in its 38th minute, and Philippe Streff in the wall, the order is Mansell, Piquet, Senna, Prost, Arnoux, Berger. Those are the top six. And Nigel Mansell is proving so wrong those people who didn't think he'd got what it takes. 5 wins this year, leading the World Championship, still in pole position, and 0.3 of a second ahead of Nelson Piquet, his teammate. I don't think there is going to be any problem over the positioning of Streff's car. Sometimes the practice has to be stopped if the car is adjudged to be in a dangerous position, but Streff had got it tucked up against the wall. We'll probably see where it is soon in relation to Michele Alboreto, the Ferrari team leader. Very unhappy man this season because the Ferrari has handled so badly that the Ferrari team have appointed a new designer for 1987, no less a man than John Barnard, who designed the tremendously successful McLarens. Alboreto is still in a position of not being able to improve his yesterday's time, as is his teammate Stefan Johansson. So the Ferrari's in bad shape.
Yes, that's what happens, or tends to happen, when you've got an unwieldy chassis. They've been fiddling with the car. The circuit is clearly quicker today. Everybody else is improving their times, and yet the Ferrari engineers are juggling about to try and get their car right, and they're probably groping in the dark a bit, and it would appear that they've gone the wrong way in their settings.
Michele Alboreto into the pits. There you see the electric blanket, which is on the tyre of the Williams there, of Nelson Piquet's car. And nowadays, all the top teams use them for every tyre on the car. It's Nigel Mansell in the background there. And the object of the exercise is to get the tyres heated up to race operating temperature or practice operating temperature, so that as soon as the driver goes out onto the circuit, he doesn't have to do a warm-up lap. he can go for it. Well, they're usually not quite up to operating temperature, but not very far off it. That's Frank Durney, who is the race engineer there of Nelson Piquet, checking the temperature of the tyre. Frank Durney engineers Nelson Piquet's car. Patrick Head, the designer, engineers Nigel Mansell's car. We've got an oil flag out actually now at the S's. That means to say that somebody has dropped some oil. We think it must be Philippe Streff, who we saw having parked his Tyrrell Renault alongside the wall. There's the yellow flag being waved to indicate caution, so this could well affect all times and means that Nigel Mansell may well stay where he is.
That's right. That would be good news for Mansell. He'll be not at all unhappy to see that. And there's the Brabham of Riccardo Patrese, clearly on a quick one. You can see all the black smoke, that's unburnt fuel coming out of the engine. They throw extra fuel in to cool the pistons when they're up on full boost. And he has, in fact, decided he doesn't want to do a quick one and has slowed it right down again. But that would underline the oil flag and whatever it is on the track probably come from Streff's parked car as he blew his engine. Underlines the wisdom of Mansell in going for a quick one very early on. And it really is the most dramatic improvement we've ever seen in a driver in Mansell's case. There's Johnny Dumfries just going out of the pits. He's on a new set of tyres. You can see the labels still stuck to the treads. And that, I would think, would be his set of E-compound qualifiers. So this is a vital moment for Dumfries. The trouble with qualifiers, you've got to collect up your quick lap. You only get one shot at it.
I can hardly believe my lucky eyes, because I now actually see a heat haze coming off the Adelaide circuit surface. That means to say that things really are in super condition in comparison with the previous days we've had here and yesterday's qualifying session, because there it is, you see, what a lovely sight that is. The rippling lines across the screen, that is hot air. That means to say that the track surface is good and warm. That means to say that the tyre compounds will be good and hot. And that means to say that Nelson Piquet in the background there on what I suspect to be the final warm-up lap before he goes for a really quick time on E-compound tyres, although it may just be a bit early. We've still got 17 minutes of this session to go. We'll soon see as Johnny Dumfries, Scottish driver in the Lotus Renault, tours gently around. In fact, he's going incredibly slowly. He's not going at warm-up speed. There's the man. That is the world champion, Alain Prost, who is down in 4th position. Now he's running true to form. He came out early in the opening stages of this qualifying session, earlier than we're used to seeing him. Now he's coming out, and I think we can see something, expect to see something pretty sensational.
Well, and I think he's going to save it, Murray. I suspect he looks as if he's on a used set of tyres there, so I suspect he's on his original C set, and I would think that he's going to go out and have a look at the track to check out just how slippery this oil patch is that we surmise has been put down by Streff's car as he blew up. So I suspect that this is a recce from Prost. He's got plenty of time to come back in and put his qualifiers on, but he wants to see the track for himself because he does not want to waste those qualifiers. As I've said before, you've only really got one lap on them, so you don't want to put them on at the wrong moment. You want to make sure that everything is right. So Prost wrecking the track.
Don't go away, because this last 15 minutes of qualifying for the grid positions for the start of the Australian Grand Prix on Sunday should be electrifying. We have Nigel Mansell in pole position as he was yesterday when the qualifying session finished, 1:18 point on this circuit. In 2nd position, Nelson Piquet, just 0.3 of a second slower. 3rd, Ayrton Senna. 4th, the man you are looking at this moment, world champion Alain Prost in the McLaren tag. The tag engine engine, which is Porsche designed and built to the specification of ex-McLaren designer John Barnard, is quite famous for the fact that it does not accept as much qualifying boost as the Hondas and the BMWs and the Renaults, but there's been big improvements recently. They've worked on it, and now the tag engine will take more boost, which means that Prost can really go for a very high position on the starting grid, which he certainly needs in his position of second in the World Championship, 6 points behind Mansell with 1 race to go.
And this qualifying now becomes really vital for the championship contenders, because on the street circuit, as this is in Adelaide, overtaking is very difficult. So you need to start at the front of the grid. And Mansell, in his quest to hold on to his World Championship lead, has really set the cat amongst the pigeons. He did a 1 minute 18.4 very early in the session, which was very nearly a second and a half quicker than anybody else. And he set a target that he has been in the comfortable position of being able to sit back and relax and watch the others shoot at, and so far nobody has really got near it. But I have a strong feeling that both Senna and Prost, and possibly Piquet, still have their really sticky qualifying tyres up their sleeves, and they're waiting till the last minutes of this session, when they hope that the track, by getting more and more rubber on it, will be offering more and more grip, and they are saving their challenge right till the end.
Only 10 minutes to go in this final hour for the Foster's Australian Grand Prix qualifying, the final hour. The fastest times as follows. Fastest still, Nigel Mansell, leader of the World Championship. Second, his own teammate, Nelson Piquet from Brazil. Third from Brazil also, Ayrton Senna, the man that you still got to look for. He could put a quick one in the final minute. Then Alain Prost is fourth fastest in his Marlboro McLaren. Fifth fastest is still René Arnoux, the little Frenchman, and sixth, the man who won the Grand Prix of Mexico, that is Gerhard Berger. He's stolen into the top 6. With less than 10 minutes to go, let's go back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
And you look at René Arnoux, the Frenchman, in his Ligier Renault, as Ayrton Senna gets ready to go out on the track, this time surely on the E-Compound qualifiers. Nigel Mansell holding pole position, 1 minute 18.4, the fastest ever at Adelaide. Alain Prost sitting there in the pits. It is all getting very exciting indeed.
Yes. See the shots of the drivers there just getting into their cars. We've had very little change in the times for the last 20 minutes or so, but it's these final minutes now that the big push will come. They have 2 sets of tyres each. That's all they're allowed for this session. All the teams have chosen one raced, soft race-type compound tyre and a super soft qualifying tyre. And most of them will have saved their super soft qualifying tyres now for the last 5 or 10 minutes of the session. 8 minutes to go.
I wonder if the super soft tyres are going to compensate for the fact that there is definitely oil on the track from, I suspect, Philippe Streff's broken Tyrrell Renault, which must be slowing things up a bit. We've been looking at the times consistently, and we think now that that is Nigel Mansell certainly on his qualifiers. Now, I have a system of operating at Grand Prix, and I always, when the last session begins, write down the people who have occupied the pole position since the session began. Only one name appears on that list today, and there he is. Nigel Mansell started in pole, getting ready to go out again, 4th. René Arnoux, 5th. Berger, 6th. Rosberg in the second McLaren is 7th. Philippe Alliot is 8th.
As Nelson Piquet also on his final set of tyres. But bear in mind that Alain Prost, for instance, has not yet equalled the time that he did this morning in the untimed session and doesn't appear to be too concerned, so he's saving his qualifiers for the last possible moment, as is Ayrton Senna. But they're all just getting ready to come out now. Piquet has just left the pits. Mansell still warming his tyres up. He'll be taking it quite carefully. He doesn't want to overheat them or waste them. It's absolutely vital to have put exactly the right amount of work into the tyres, not too hot, but warmed up to the right temperature as you start your flying lap. It's a one-shot business. You've got one really good lap at it before the tyres lose performance. It's vital to get it right. He also has to look for space on the track. He wants a good gap in front of him so that he doesn't come on any slower cars. And the tyres are just beginning to look ready. Once he's got rid of the labels, then you can reasonably reckon that the tyres are just coming up to their best possible moment. Now, he'll want to stay in front of the Brabham, and there goes Ayrton Senna. Senna on his E qualifiers. So this is it. This is the one shot for Senna. We'll try and have a look underneath the car to see if his undertray's developed a fault and got bendy again.
Nigel Mansell's coming up towards Foster's hairpin, which is the last turn, and then that will be to start, I believe, his quick lap. The labels seem to be virtually off the tyres. Over the line he goes now, and he's travelling into the chicane. Left. You see the yellow flag is still waving in the background, and Nigel is taking it very steadily indeed. So he has decided to abort that lap.
Absolutely. As soon as he saw the yellow flag, he wisely decided to abort the lap. He didn't know what it was going to be. But it's vital to protect those tyres. We've got just over 4 minutes to go. There is Ayrton Senna building up also.
Still, Mansell, Piquet, Senna, Prost, Arnoux, Berger, and the oil flags and the yellow flags, I won't say may have saved Mansell because he looked invulnerable. 1:18.4 is sensationally fast. He has resisted the pressure which has been increasing on him ever since he took the World Championship lead by winning superbly the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch this year. And it looks to me as though he is going into the start of the Australian Grand Prix, the last and most important round of the year for him, in the best place of all. Pole position on the starting grid, but not if Ayrton Senna can do anything about it, because look at this. The Brazilian is really going for it. Oil or no oil. There's the sparks. He's got the minimum height on the car. The downforce is at its maximum, and Ayrton Senna, who is famous for his electrifying laps in the very closing stages of practice, with now 3 minutes to go, is on his way to try and take that pole position from Nigel Mansell, as he did last year. His target is 1 minute 18.4 seconds. Through the heat haze, there's a yellow flag at racetrack hairpin, which he's approaching as he comes down the Brabham Straight at some 320 kilometres an hour, taking Alain Prost. He's had to go offline, and he's slowed right down. And you saw a smoking car on the right there. I couldn't identify it. Well, there's the Tyrrell of Streff, and it's one of the Zach speeds. It's Hub Rotengatter. Well, that has really blown it, I think, for Ayrton Senna, because if, as I suspect, he's on his ease, he must be, it means that he's now got just about 2 minutes. It's not a question of time, because you can actually start your fastest lap literally seconds before the end of the practice session, and as long as you get across the line before the checkered flag appears, you are okay. But with some 1 minute 50 seconds now before the end of the session, and with the Zach speed and the Tyrrell of respectively Rotengatter and Streff parked by the circuit, Mansell is going very quickly indeed. He's got no need to in terms of protecting his pole position. Piquet has just started a lap. And there's Riccardo Patrese in the Brabham BMW.
And that is Nelson Piquet. And Nelson is committed so far to a quick lap. Patrese makes room for him. PK was very quick there on the corner onto the straight. Vital to be quick through that one, because that carries your momentum all the way down the straight. There's still held yellow and an oil flag there, but Piquet's already seen that. He knows what's there. Mansell is in front of him. Moves out of the way. Piquet go through on his committed lap. Nelson Piquet over the start-finish line and did not improve. But he's going for another quick lap. Moretto makes room, leaves Piquet the racing line, and there is the checkered flag, but Piquet, remember, can finish the
position. The practice session is officially finishing now with the checkered flag out. Nelson Piquet could just in the dying seconds not get pole position, I think, because he slowed right down. Something has happened inside the office that Jackie Stewart was telling us about earlier on, and so there is the man who has preserved his pole position from yesterday. This is the 4th pole position of Nigel Mansell's long career now, and certainly the most important that he has ever put up, and probably the most important he ever will put up, because it may well have put him in line for his first ever World Championship. So at the end of this second 60-minute qualifying session, Nigel Mansell takes pole position. His teammate Nelson Piquet in the second Williams Honda is second. Ayrton Senna, who had pole position last year, is in 3rd place in the Lotus Renault. Alain Prost is 4th, and that means to say that the 3 World Championship contenders, Mansell, Piquet and Prost, are all in the top 4, and that is from where they need to be from their point of view. And a happy Mansell exits the Williams Honda confident for Sunday. Into the garage, he can be very, very well pleased with his day's work.
Yes, a really marvellous effort by Mansell. It really underlines his claim to the World Championship. He set an unreachable target very early in the session, went straight out, decided to commit himself to his all-out effort right at the beginning of the session, which I think really jumped his rivals a little bit. Basically, nobody really threatened him throughout the session. Marvellous effort, and absolutely vital for him to start the race from pole position. From there, he can afford to be defensive. Remember, he only needs to finish in the first 3 to be certain of winning the World Championship. And starting off the pole certainly makes it a very, very good situation for that. Alan Jones finally qualified in 15th place with a 1:22.796. Been a difficult season for him. Nelson Piquet, of course, finishes second. There is Ayrton Senna, who is in 3rd place on the grid. So the 3 World Championship contenders are 3 people who can win it in the first 4 places, and Ayrton Senna being the one who can't win it, he's in 3rd position.
And let me, just as a rider, say, as you see Alain Prost McLaren being pushed away, that the McLarens always go better in the final half hour of practice on Sunday and in the race than they do in practice. And with that intriguing thought, it's back to Mike and Jackie.
Thank you, Murray. From the president of the Nigel Mansell fan club and Jackie Stewart, that grip of Nigel Mansell's on the World Championship, it must be tightening, because he was quickest yesterday and he was quickest again this afternoon.
Yes, I think the fact that he's on pole position must do a lot to boost
his morale apart from anything else, and he did make a bit of a muck-up of the start of the Mexican Grand Prix. He either didn't have the car in gear, which is what everyone suspects, or it was something to do with the transmission. He has to start this one properly, and if anyone has pre-race nerves, he'll have it on pole position. But certainly the good thing is that all our contenders are in the first 2 rows of the grid, and that's really what matters. They're well placed.
Now, do you think Mansell should go out there and try and win this race tomorrow? He's only got to finish first, second or third. The two, of course, who have to win are Prost and Piquet. What would you do?
I would go out and try and lead the race, because if I'm in pole position, I would want to get away from this first corner problem, and if I'm in pole position, I'm in position to perhaps do that. The biggest risk to Nigel Mansell now is getting involved in traffic on that very first corner, the place that we said could produce a first lap incident because of congestion. If he could just get his head a little bit in front of the rest of the field there, he can then set the pace. I learned in 1968, when I started to sort of dominate a little bit, that if whatever speed I did, the rest of the field would follow. If I went faster, they would come faster with me. If I went slower, after a little while, they would go slower with me. So it was a question of pacing the race. I think Nigel's almost in a position to do that right now. It'll be interesting to see who's behind him. If Ayrton Senna is behind him, that's another matter. Keep in mind that everybody needs to finish. Alain Prost needs to win, so does Piquet, but Mansell could more comfortably do it from the front.
Okay, well, the quickest man around here last year in qualifying was Ayrton Senna. He wasn't quite quick enough today. Let's have a look at the top 8 qualifiers as they'll go off the grid tomorrow. As Jackie said, right off the pole, Nigel Mansell. Nelson Piquet, his teammate, will go from 2. Ayrton Senna from 3. Alain Prost, the reigning world champ, will go from 4. René Arnoux driving well here in Adelaide from 5. Gerhard Berger from 6, the man who won the Mexican Grand Prix. Then Keke Rosberg and Philippe Alliot. I hope you're enjoying our live coverage this afternoon of qualifying here in Adelaide. Tomorrow, the big one. We'll be back with more in just a tick.
Hi, I am Alain Prost, the world champion. I hope you watch the Grand Prix on Channel 9.
The one Grand Prix down there in pit lane. With him, our Ken Sparks.
Thanks very much, Mike. Well, Nigel, you're being distracted by one of those quick helicopters, mate.
I'll tell you, it's turning it on its side over there. Very good too.
Congratulations. How did that feel?
It felt fairly hairy, actually, but obviously well pleased. But it's a shame that the oil went down at the end. Otherwise, I think we could have gone a little bit quicker.
The circuit in comparison to last year?
Obviously a little bit quicker, but still the same problems with dust and oil that goes down. But it should make for a very interesting race tomorrow.
All this week I've been watching you, nothing but pure determination. How did you feel on the track today?
Determined. You know, I've done all I can. I've got a pole position here for the last race, and it gives us the best opportunity to try and do well in the race, and I've just got to hope for reliability and a little bit of luck.
Right. How hard do you think race tomorrow? Come that first corner, memories of last year?
Well, if I have memories of last year on the first corner, it means I get the lead, and but then I had problems, the gearbox blew up, but I feel sure that we shouldn't have too many problems, hopefully.
Nigel, thank you for your time. We're being attacked down here. We'll let you go to your commitments. Congratulations again. We'll see you on pole tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.